The worst kind of prison is the one you don't realize you're in. My friends, let's get something straight from the very first breath of this message. Just because someone walks away doesn't mean they're free. Just because they smile in a photo or post a story with someone new doesn't mean they've truly moved on. No, that's a lie the ego tells to cover the cracks. A fantasy that looks good on the outside but rots on the inside. And today, we're here to break that lie wide open. They thought they moved on? No, they moved around. There's a difference. Moving on is healing, understanding, evolving. Moving around? That's distraction. That's busying the mind so it doesn't have to feel the truth, echoing in the silence you left behind. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a ghost ship drifting across the ocean. No captain, no destination, just sailing endlessly. From a distance it looks alive. It moves, it floats, it even waves its tattered flag in the wind. But get closer and you realize there's no one truly steering. That's them. That's what their moving on looks like. Motion without meaning. Noise without peace. See, folks, society taught us the most dangerous story, that if they stop texting, stop calling, or block you, boom, it means closure. They forgot you. They're over you. But here's the truth. Most won't say out loud. Real connections don't end with a mute button. They echo. They haunt. They show up in dreams, in songs, in the quiet moments when the world goes still. They appear in the smell of coffee, in a certain laugh, in the reflection on a rainy day. And if you were real, if you loved with depth and presence, they can't run from that. You don't move on from something you never faced. You bury it, you paint over it, you try to erase it with someone else's touch. But the imprint? It remains. That's the law of emotion, folks. The heart remembers what the mind tries to forget. And that's why it's impossible for them to truly move on, because you weren't just a person. You were a mirror. You were a lesson. You were a chapter that wrote itself in permanent ink. And let's be honest for a second. Some of y'all have been sitting there wondering, did I mean anything at all? You see their posts, their new smiles, and you feel like you were just a page they tore out. But what you don't see is what happens when the lights go out, when the phone isn't buzzing, when the act fades. That's when your silence becomes a roar. That's when the ghost ship starts realizing it's lost at sea. You weren't forgotten, you were avoided. Because remembering you, that means facing what they lost. And facing that would require them to admit that the way they handled you wasn't strength, it was cowardice. So they pretend, they distract. They tell themselves stories that help them sleep. But sleep doesn't mean peace, my friends. Sometimes silence is the loudest scream in the night. So I'm telling you this today, not to inflate your ego, but to restore your dignity. You mattered. You left a mark. And they're not free of it just because they changed locations or faces. You are the storm they sail through, even when they think the skies are clear. So stay with me. We're going deep into the truth that rewires the mind and flips the emotional script. By the end of this video, you won't be wondering if they miss you. You'll know the answer in your bones. And before we dive in, drop this in the comments right now. I am the memory they can't erase. Say it loud. Say it proud. Remind them. Remind yourself. And if this already hit you in the chest like it was meant to, smash that like button and subscribe for more truths they don't want you to hear. Let's begin. Number 1. The illusion of moving on. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Let that settle for a second, because this is the illusion that traps so many of us after someone leaves. We imagine they've moved on. We imagine they're free, happy, glowing, healed. We imagine they've wiped their slate clean and thrown us into some emotional black hole where we no longer exist. But folks, that's not reality. That's fear dressed as logic. That's the imagination spiraling in the absence of information. And today, we're tearing that illusion apart, piece by piece. See, when someone walks away from something real, something deep, they don't just move on. Most don't even move forward. They move fast. But fast doesn't mean far. It just means they're running. Running from the silence. Running from accountability. Running from the echo of your presence that still lingers like smoke in their lungs. They don't move on. They escape into distraction, hoping if they sprint hard enough, the shadow won't follow. But here's the thing. You can't outrun a shadow. It's part of you. It clings. It whispers. And your energy? It became that shadow in their life. You ever seen someone try to outrun their reflection at sunset? No matter how far or fast they go, it stretches with them. That's what it's like when they try to move on from someone who actually mattered. That ghost of your authenticity, your energy, your presence, it doesn't fade with time. It grows in the silence. It gets louder in the quiet places they thought would bring them peace. And yet, here you are, questioning your worth, asking yourself, how could they move on so quickly? Was I that easy to forget? Did I even matter? But the real question, my friends, isn't whether they've moved on, it's what they're trying to move away from. Because here's a truth most won't admit. People don't leave love. They leave discomfort. They leave mirrors that show them the parts of themselves they're not ready to confront. And if you were real with them, if you showed up with heart, with consistency, with depth, they're not running from you. They're running from themselves through you. The world will try to sell you this polished version of moving on. Oh, they've healed. They've grown. They're thriving. But take a closer look. Most of the time it's noise, new hobbies, new friends, maybe even a new relationship. But does that mean healing? Or is it just distraction dressed as progress? Think of it like this. If someone smashes a mirror and tapes over the cracks with pictures of other people, does that mean the mirror's fixed? No. It just means they're trying not to see themselves. That's what most moving on looks like. A performance, an illusion. Because true healing is quiet, it's messy, it's facing the hard questions, it's sitting in silence and feeling the full weight of what was lost. And most people? They don't have the courage for that. So they keep running, hoping they never have to stop long enough to hear the truth whispering behind them. You're still hurting. Let's break the biggest lie right now. Just because they aren't talking about you doesn't mean they aren't thinking about you. Silence doesn't equal absence. It often means suppression. And suppression, that's pressure. That builds over time. You're not out of sight. You're in the unspoken, in the regrets, in the nights they can't sleep, in the quiet scrolls through old memories when they think no one's watching. I've seen it play out too many times. People pretending they're fine, posting about growth, quoting self-help gurus while quietly checking if you've viewed their story. Laughing louder in public, crying harder in private. Because the truth. You can fake a glow-up, but you can't fake peace. And if they left chaos unresolved, that chaos still lives inside them. Only now it wears a different outfit. Let me ask you this, my friend. Have you ever pretended to move on when you hadn't? worn the smile, played the game, told yourself the lie just to get through the day. Then you know how it works. You know how heavy it feels. So, why would you assume they're doing any different just because their pictures look filtered and fun? Seneca was right. We suffer more in imagination than reality. Your mind is creating a story based on what you think they're doing. But their reality? That's locked behind a door you don't see. And 9 times out of 10, what's behind that door is confusion, guilt, avoidance, and a growing realization that what they lost wasn't replaceable. Because here's what they don't tell you when they walk away. Even if they find someone new, they'll still miss the way you understood them without words. Even if they laugh with someone else, they'll remember how your silence felt like home. Even if they move on in appearance, the soul knows what it lost. It knows, and that's why they keep running. Not towards something new, but away from the truth that's chasing them. So today, we stop romanticizing their moving on. We stop imagining freedom where there's only denial. We stop giving so much power to their silence and start recognizing our own. Because if they truly moved on, they wouldn't need to prove it to the world. Peace doesn't perform. Only ego does. You are not a chapter they closed. You're the book they never finished reading. You're not a memory they buried. You're the feeling they can't name but can't shake. And the deeper you loved, the deeper they'll ache when they realize they can't replace you with noise. So type this in the comments right now and let it be a declaration. I am not replaceable. I am unforgettable. Say it loud. Say it proud. Show yourself. Show the world around you that you've broken the illusion, and you're standing in the power of what they lost. And if this hits something deep, press the like button, smash that subscribe, and stay with me. Because what's coming next? It's going to rewire everything they told you about closure, silence, and emotional control. Let's keep going. Number 2, emotional residue. Never lies. They say time heals all wounds, but that's only half the truth, because what they don't tell you is that time can't erase what was emotionally embedded. Some experiences don't just leave memories, they leave residue, and no matter how many distractions someone throws over it, no matter how many new conversations, laughs, or late-night texts they bury themselves in, that emotional residue stays. You see, attachment doesn't live in logic. It lives in the body. It lives in the nervous system, in the subtle reactions, in the places we don't even realize are storing it. That's why you can remember someone's scent years later. That's why a song can suddenly hit you like a wave. That's why someone can be in a room full of people, in a brand new relationship, and still feel something missing and not know why. It's because you left more than a memory, you left an imprint. Let's put it this way. Imagine spraying perfume on your favorite hoodie. Now hang that hoodie in a closet. Days pass. Weeks, maybe even months, but the next time you wear it, that scent is still there, soft, subtle, undeniable. That's what emotional residue is. That's what your energy becomes to them. A scent in the fabric of their mind, a feeling in their emotional skin. And the more real you were, the deeper it soaked in. You were never just attention. You weren't a warm body in the room or a distraction on a lonely night. You were a mirror, a standard, a reflection that showed them their better and their worst. You were the lesson they didn't want, but the one life knew they needed. And lessons, they don't fade, they haunt, they return in every situation that doesn't measure up. Let's be honest here, my friends. You might have thought they forgot you because they're not talking about you, because they're not reaching out. But silence isn't proof of peace. It's often the proof of residue they don't want to stir. Because talking about you would reopen everything they're trying to bottle. It would expose how not okay they still are. I've seen it time and time again. They smile, they post, they pretend. But ask anyone who's tried to move on from something real, and they'll tell you, there are moments that just hit out of nowhere. They can't explain it. A memory flashes, a dream repeats, a song ruins their morning, and boom, they're right back in that emotional room they tried to burn down. Why? Because residue doesn't care about timelines. It doesn't respect logic. It lives in the soul, in the triggers, in the places that no one else sees but always feels. Now maybe they thought you were replaceable. Maybe they believed they could just plug someone else into your spot and feel the same. But here's the truth. They might get a body, but they won't get you. They won't get the way you understood their silence, the way you noticed the little things they didn't even say, the way your presence calmed storms they never spoke out loud. That's what leaves residue. Not just love, but presence. Not just attention, but depth. And that's why it's impossible to truly move on from someone who left emotional fingerprints all over your soul. Because the next person, they'll always be measured against a standard they never got to understand. They'll feel the gap, even if they don't know what caused it. And your ex, they'll know, even if they never admit it. Psychology backs this too. Emotional experiences, especially those tied to identity, vulnerability, or significant emotional highs and lows, get imprinted in the brain's neural pathways. That's why trauma lingers. That's why joy echoes. And that's why you still feel them, and why, whether they admit it or not, they still feel you too. But here's the kicker. Emotional residue doesn't mean you're still attached. It means your presence had weight. It means you left something real behind. And if you're worried they don't feel it, trust me, they do. They just don't show it the way you expect. Because not everyone deals with emotions the same. Some suppress, some number, some pretend. But residue has a funny way of rising through all of it. It shows up when they're tired, when they're lonely, when they least expect it. And that's when your silence screams. So let's reclaim your power right here, right now. Don't doubt your impact just because they're quiet. Don't question your worth just because they're trying to erase you with noise. Because deep down, they feel you. Not just in memory, but in moments, in reflexes, in the pauses between their new distractions. And if you needed someone to tell you this today, you were never forgettable. You were never just another. You were a soul collision, a shift, a standard. And they'll feel that for a long, long time. So write this in the comments right now and remind the world. My presence lingers even in my absence. Say it loud. Say it proud. Show yourself. And if this struck something in your chest, hit that like button, subscribe for what's coming next, and stay with me. Because this story is far from over. Next, we're diving into the truth about what they really run toward and what they're still running from. Number 3. They didn't move on, they moved around. They can change the scenery, but the story always follows them. My friends, this next part might sting a little, not because it's cruel, but because it's true. We've been taught to believe that when someone leaves, when they find someone new, when they move to a different city, or suddenly post how happy they are in a new relationship, It means they've moved on. But here's the truth. Most people don't move on. They move around. And there's a big difference. You see, emotional pain isn't a suitcase you leave behind. It's a ghost. And ghosts don't stay in places. They stay with people. Imagine a haunted house. You can sell it, paint the walls, redecorate every corner, or even move out entirely. But if the haunting came from you, your choices, your unresolved guilt, your emotional residue, then guess what? The ghost doesn't stay in the house. It follows the owner. That's what they're dealing with. They think a change of environment means a change of emotion. That a new body in their bed means a healed heart. That new conversations, new routines, new distractions will overwrite everything you meant. But emotions don't work like apps. You can't uninstall them. You can't just delete a memory that lives in your nervous system. You can't block out a soul imprint with a new contact in your phone. And when someone truly mattered, when someone dug deep into your soul and reflected things you weren't ready to face, you don't move on, you carry them, whether you admit it or not. They might be in a different city, wearing a different smile, holding a different hand. But every time their laughter doesn't quite feel the same, every time a new person doesn't understand them like you did, every time they feel that emotional gap they can't explain, that's you echoing inside them. That's the ghost that followed. Now here's where people get trapped in their thoughts. You see the posts, you hear the stories. They've changed. They seem happy now. And that little voice creeps in. Was I the problem? But let me break that lie before it spreads. Just because they found someone new doesn't mean they found peace. You don't fix internal wounds by rearranging external circumstances. You don't heal by replacing, you heal by facing. And if they left you with questions, silence, betrayal, or avoidance, and then jumped into something new, they didn't heal. They hid. It's like covering a broken bone with designer clothes. Sure, it might look better on the outside, but underneath, it's still fractured, still fragile, still hurting. And if you were the one who truly saw them, if you loved them through their chaos, their doubts, their highs and lows, then your absence didn't just create space. It left a void, one that can't be filled with new smiles or new timelines, because you weren't a placeholder, you were a reflection. And reflections, they haunt long after the room is empty. Let's be real, folks. You don't forget someone who made you feel seen. You don't replace someone who challenged your ego and touched your soul, and even if they're trying to convince themselves they're over it. Even if they say all the right words, post all the right images, their emotions are still trailing behind, like a storm cloud tied to their ankle. Because emotions, real ones, move slow, and no matter how fast they change directions, that cloud keeps catching up. And I know how tempting it is to believe the illusion, to scroll through their feed and think they're better off. But what you're seeing is the set, not the scene, the highlight reel, not the truth. People don't post their regrets. They don't post their breakdowns at 2 a.m. when they realize the silence you left is louder than the conversation they're forcing. They don't post the empty feeling after a new touch doesn't spark the same warmth. That's the part they hide. But you were the part they'll never forget. So here's the truth you need to plant deep in your mind today. Just because they look like they've moved on doesn't mean they have. Just because they ran doesn't mean they escaped. Because emotion isn't a place, it's a presence. and yours still lingers. Write this in the comments right now. They can run, but not escape me. Say it loud. Say it proud. Show yourself. Show the world that you understand your value goes beyond proximity, that your energy doesn't need permission to echo. And if you feel this message hitting somewhere deep inside you, press that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with me, because next we're going to dive into the harsh reality of comparison and how even their new love still walks in your shadow. Let's go deeper. Number 4. The comparison game is unavoidable. The soul always remembers the one who touched it without trying to own it. My friends, let's cut through the noise, because this next truth is one they'll never admit out loud. But you know it's happening. It's unavoidable. It's automatic. It's psychological. The comparison game. You see, people can try to move forward. They can get into something new, start fresh, smile for the pictures, say all the right things like, "I'm happy now," or "This is different." But behind that smile, behind those staged captions and rehearsed laughter, there's something else happening in the background. They're comparing. And if what you had was real, if you were vulnerable, present, consistent, authentic, then guess what? Every new experience they have is being measured up to you, not because you're trying to haunt them, not because you're trying to hold them hostage in your memory, but because when someone has tasted depth, shallow water can never satisfy again. Let's make this crystal clear. Imagine you once had a glass of rare, aged vintage wine, smooth, deep, refined, unforgettable. Now fast forward, and suddenly you're sipping boxed juice at a gas station. Sure, it's sweet. Sure, it's convenient. But can it even compare? No. And the more you sip, the more you realize what you had, what you lost, and what can't be replicated. That's you. You're the rare vintage, the experience that left a mark. And now, every new person, they're boxed juice pretending to be fine wine. You may not see the comparisons happening, but they're happening. Every quiet moment, every awkward silence, every slight misunderstanding becomes a portal back to you. They don't get me like they did. Why doesn't this feel the same? Why do I miss that energy, that voice, that presence? These thoughts creep in, subtle at first, but louder over time. And it's not even about perfection. It's not about being flawless. It's about being real. You showed them something that couldn't be faked. You gave them your presence, not just your body. You listened without needing to speak. You held space for them when even they couldn't hold space for themselves. And that is not something they can replace with a rebound or a rushed romance. Let me break the lie that's probably echoing in your head. That lie that says they've found someone better. Listen to me. Better isn't about new, it's about connection. And connection isn't surface level. It's soul deep. You gave them that. And even if they find someone who checks the boxes, even if this new person says all the right things and looks good in pictures, there's always going to be that nagging feeling. Something's missing. Because you weren't just someone they dated. You became the standard. That's how comparison works. Once someone has experienced depth, truth, and soul, everything else feels like an echo, a simulation, a mask. And the more they try to force it, the more it reveals just how unique you were. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. Even if they tried to paint you as the problem, even if they convinced themselves they were right to walk away, the comparison still burns. Because their mind might twist the narrative, but the heart never lies. The heart knows when something felt safe. The heart remembers who brought peace in chaos, who stayed when things got hard, who listened when no one else understood. I've seen it, time and time again. People try to pretend they're over it. They say they're fine, they act happy, but then something small triggers them. A song, a scent, a memory. And suddenly they're back in that emotional space, whispering to themselves, "Why doesn't this feel like it used to?" And boom, the comparison takes over. It's human, it's natural, it's how we're wired. We compare everything, food, movies, memories, people, and if you were the real thing, the kind that doesn't show up twice in a lifetime, then they lose that game every single time. Quietly, privately, but inevitably. So stop doubting your impact just because they're with someone new. Don't assume you've been replaced just because someone else showed up. What you gave can't be replicated, and the more they try to force it, the more they realize it. Slowly, painfully, regretfully. Right now, I want you to own that truth. Stand in it. Say it out loud. Write it in the comments and let the world feel it. I am the standard others are measured by. Because you are. You set the bar. You left the imprint. You were the rare vintage in a world full of cheap thrills, and nothing they chase will ever taste the same. If this landed with you, press that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with me. Because in the next section, we're going even deeper. We're about to uncover why their ego moved on, but their soul never did. You ready? Let's keep going. Number 5. Their ego moved on, but their soul stayed behind. The soul speaks in silence, but the ego screams for attention. My friends, this is where it gets real. Because if you've ever found yourself wondering how someone could walk away so easily, post like nothing happened, smile with someone new, or act like you were just a chapter in their story, they didn't move on. Their ego did. Their soul. That's a whole different story, because the ego craves pride. It wants to win. It wants to appear unbothered. But the soul just wants peace. And when you've touched someone at a soul level, they can't fake peace while you're still haunting their heart. Picture this. Someone sailing 2 ships. One ship is shiny, polished, gliding across the surface where everyone can see. This is the ship they post on social media. This is the ship they show their friends. The "I'm fine, I've moved on, look how happy I am" ship. But then there's the other one, the hidden ship, underneath the surface. It's older, slower, weighed down. It's leaking with regret, confusion, and unanswered questions. That's the real ship. That's their soul. And every mile they travel, that second ship is sinking just a little more. You see the highlights, but you don't see the heaviness. You see the curated moments, but not the 2 a.m. thoughts. And let me tell you, social media is a stage. It doesn't show healing. It shows hiding. It's the perfect costume for someone trying to convince themselves and everyone else that they're okay. But here's the problem with costumes. They come off when the show ends. So while they're performing for the world, their soul is quietly whispering, "This isn't over." And that whisper grows louder in the silence you left behind. It echoes in the places they once found comfort. It stings in the moments they thought they'd feel relief. Because when the ego gets what it wants, distance, space, pride, guess what the soul gets? Emptiness. And the deeper your connection was, the harder that emptiness hits. You didn't just fill a role. You filled a space in them they didn't even know was empty until you were gone. That's why the soul holds on, even when the ego pretends to let go. They're not over it. They're overwhelmed by it. But they can't say that, because saying it would mean dropping the mask. It would mean admitting that they didn't win anything by walking away, that instead of feeling free, they feel lost. Instead of clarity, they're stuck in emotional fog. But they'll never post that. They'll never confess that, because pride is loud. And ego hates surrender. You may have seen them post something cryptic like, "Sometimes you have to let go to grow." Or maybe they reposted a quote about self-love and new chapters. But that's not healing. That's coping. That's ego talking to itself in a language it doesn't even understand. Because healing isn't loud. It doesn't need a post. It happens in the quiet spaces. And if they haven't sat in those quiet spaces long enough to face what they lost, they haven't healed. They've just hidden. Let's break this myth wide open right now. The myth that silence from them means you didn't matter. The myth that them appearing happy means you were replaced. The myth that a new relationship means closure. My friends, pride can build palaces on the outside while the soul sleeps in ruins within. And you? You weren't just someone they dated. You were the mirror that showed them who they really were and who they weren't ready to become. That mirror still exists. It's just buried beneath distractions, noise, and curated images. But late at night, when the world goes quiet, when their phone dies and the lights are out, that's when the soul speaks. That's when your name rises to the surface. Not because they want you back in the same way, but because they finally feel what their ego tried to silence. So don't confuse their performance for peace. Don't let their distance convince you that you didn't leave a mark, because people can only fake wholeness for so long. Eventually the mask cracks, the ego slips, and what's left underneath is the soul, still tethered to the one who saw it. And that's you. So if you're sitting there wondering if they even care, they do, deeper than they'd ever admit, because pride won't allow it. But the soul remembers, the soul replays, the soul aches. Write this in the comments and say it like you mean it. They miss me deeper than they admit. Say it loud. Say it proud. Show yourself. Show the world around you that you see beyond the surface, that you trust the silence, and that you know your value doesn't disappear just because they're too prideful to say your name. And if this spoke to you, press that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with me, because next we're diving into the most haunting phase of all, when the memories start showing up uninvited, and the flashbacks begin. Let's keep going. Number 6. The flashback phase always comes. Time doesn't erase, it stores. My friends, let's dive into a truth that sneaks up when you least expect it. The moment when they thought they were in the clear, thought they had escaped, thought they were finally over it. But suddenly you're back. Not in person, not in message, but in memory. Because no matter how far someone runs, the past doesn't just sit quietly. It waits. And when they least expect it, it echoes. This is what I call the flashback phase. And trust me, it always comes. You see, memory isn't a straight road. It doesn't follow a neat timeline like some movie script. It's a maze of moments, hidden in smells, in sounds, in scenes. One random song, one familiar place, one old photo they forgot to delete, and suddenly, boom, they're right back in that moment with you. It hits like lightning. No warning, no logic, just emotion, raw, unfiltered, and real. Because memory doesn't live in the mind alone. It lives in the body. That's why psychologists say emotional imprints, especially the unresolved ones, stay buried deep in the nervous system. They don't disappear with distraction. They sit there, quietly, like landmines. And all it takes is one step in the wrong direction, one trigger, and the explosion hits. That's what you are now, a trigger of truth. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you mattered, because you meant something that they tried to bury without processing. And you don't bury what doesn't matter, you bury what's too heavy to carry. But the thing is, buried doesn't mean gone. Imagine a quiet room, no music, no voices, just stillness. Now imagine someone speaking in that room long ago. Their words bounce, reflect, fade, but not completely. The walls remember. The silence holds the sound. That's what your presence became. You're not noise anymore. You're an echo. And echoes are tricky things. They come back when everything else is still. They return when distraction dies and the soul starts to whisper. And that's when it hits them. That flash of a moment where you made them laugh. That memory of how you looked at them when no one else did. That gut punch of realizing the person they pushed away is the very person their soul still searches for in quiet moments. They might be with someone new. They might be trying their best to hold it together. But when a flashback hits, it doesn't care who's next to them. It brings them back, to you, to what was said, to what wasn't said, to the version of themselves that only existed when you were in the room. And don't get it twisted. They might not reach out. They might not confess it. But that doesn't mean the echo didn't hit. Some people are too proud to admit it, too guarded to share it. But the flashback phase isn't about public breakdowns. It's about private reckonings, internal earthquakes, the ones that shake everything while the outside looks perfectly still. I've read too many stories, seen too many confessions from people years later saying, "I thought I moved on," until something brought them back. A place, a date, a voice, and suddenly they were crying in a car, wondering how they ended up in a memory they tried to forget. And the worst part, they didn't even see it coming. That's the truth people don't tell you. Moving on isn't a straight line. It's a circle, and eventually everything comes back around. So if you're sitting in your silence, doubting your value, wondering if you were just a passing thought, stop. You were a feeling, and feelings don't fade. They resurface. Especially the ones that never got closure, especially the ones tied to real connection. They can post, they can smile. But when the noise fades, when the distractions wear thin, and the world goes quiet, you echo, in their chest, in their mind, in the places they thought were healed. And they realize, in those moments, that forgetting you was never an option. Because you weren't just another voice in the crowd. You were the voice in the silence. So I want you to write this in the comments right now. I left echoes they can't silence. Say it loud. Say it proud. Own it. Because you did. And no amount of distance, no amount of pretending can mute the impact of someone who spoke to the soul. If this hit something deep, if you know you're not crazy for feeling like your energy still lingers, hit that like button, press subscribe, and stay with me. Because next, we're stepping into the moment when they realize you're not coming back. And that's when the panic truly begins. Let's go deeper. Number 7. The pain of realizing you're not reaching out. This is the moment the panic begins, not because you left, but because you stayed gone. See, at first they were confident, cocky even. They thought you'd circle back, just like before. But days turned to silence. Weeks passed. No message, no sign. And that's when it hits. They were never the one holding the power. You were. They start to realize the attention pipeline is bone dry, and it always flowed one way. You were the lighthouse guiding them, and now it's out. They're lost at sea, looking for your light in the darkness they created. And the scariest part, you're not playing hard to get. You're actually gone. They scroll through old messages. They hesitate on just checking in. They feel the weight of the silence because for the first time, it's real and it's loud. So let them drift. Let them sit in what they thought they wanted. Because your silence, it speaks volumes. It's not revenge. It's truth. It's power. It's closure they never asked for, but now can't unhear. Write it in the comments right now. My silence is the truth they can't ignore. Say it loud. Say it proud. And stay with me. We're almost at the breaking point. Number 8. Why you must never go back. Now that your power has been restored, don't trade it for crumbs dressed as closure. You've rebuilt your wings. Don't clip them for someone who watched you fall and walked away. Going back would be like stepping into your old cage after learning how to fly. They may come knocking, but you're not who you were. This isn't about whether they deserve you. It's about who you've become without them. Stronger, wiser, whole. Let them miss you. Let them carry the weight. But never go back. Drop this in the comments. I am the lesson they'll never forget. Say it loud. Say it proud. And now we've come full circle. If you've stayed with me through this journey, you already know. The silence wasn't weakness. It was power. Every moment you stayed gone, you rewrote the story. You shifted the balance. You became the version of yourself that no longer begs to be seen. So don't go back. You're not meant to return. You're meant to rise. If this message stirred something deep inside you, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share this with someone who needs it. And don't forget, drop your final affirmation below. I am the lesson they'll never forget. Let's rise.